All right. For everyone who's still out there, go ahead and take your seats. We are sticking right on schedule. So, and thanks so much again to our sponsors. I know UHY was just playing there, but again, this event does not happen with all the support from our sponsors. So really, really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brad McDonald. I'm the COO of Continuum Ag. Hard to believe, 10 years of the company, I've been there for 6 of them. So it's been a fun ride. But I'm originally from Northeast Iowa. I farmed there, grew up on a pig farm, 6th generation farmer up there. And our claim to fame is we had the big boar for 3 years at the Iowa State Fair. So if you ever saw a Big Mac, Big Buck, or Itty Bitty, or if you ever heard my spiel about that, yeah, that came from the McDonald farm. So it's happy to be here. And one of the things about Continuum Ag is we like to tell it like it is. And that's actually what this next panel is going to be about, where I'm a farmer. I work for Continuum Ag. And so naturally you would say I'm a regen farmer. I was definitely not a regen farmer how this all started out. And I think that most farmers who go down this path feel this way. And I still don't consider myself a regen farmer, even though I'm doing the no-till and the cover crops. What I consider myself is I'm an opportunistic farmer, where I saw an opportunity when I was introduced to Mitchell 6 years ago. Basically, I saw an opportunity that this is the future of agriculture, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I think a lot of you in the room probably feel the same way. And so I think it's just really important to hear that farmer's journey from farmers, successful farmers who have been through that themselves. And so for that, I just really appreciate to be part of the ride. It's a pretty special thing. Before we introduce our farmers here, also had a couple things. Continuum's booth is back there. If you guys do have any further questions, I've been manning that here pretty much all day, but we get lonely back there. So if you guys want to come back and say hi or have any questions, happy to answer anything that we can. And so with that, I'll go ahead and let's bring out our farmer panel. If you want to come on out, guys. So we got John Carroll, Andy Bensend, and Hans Rinchie. And basically, how we want to kind of set this up is go through each one of their journeys and really understand what their perspective is, particularly with 45Z, CI, all of the good stuff. But they all have their own story to tell and would really love to dive in. And as we're going through it, feel free to submit questions. So there's a number up on the screen. I get those fed to me here as we go. So if you guys hear anything that piques your interest, I'm happy to try and answer or ask the questions rather to these guys as we go along. So feel free, go ahead, send your text messages in and we'll go in that way. So, all right, let's start from the far end. Hans, if you want to start us off, how has your approach been in general, and just give us your story in Northeast Iowa, kind of in my area, but yeah, essentially, how have you approached both CI certification and regen practices in general?
Yeah, Hans Rinchie, farmer from Jessup, Iowa. We have a row crop operation there. Our approach on it has been, we are in a position right now to take advantage of this, and we can see down the pipeline that one day we might not be able to take this full of advantage of it. It could be implemented and asked of us. And so it's like, while we have this opportunity, a bird in hand to turn this into an opportunity, let's do it. So what's that look like? It looks like we're adopting cover crops, reducing tillage, pulling things in, and trying to push mom and dad to say, no, we can go ahead and take that risk.
Excellent. Now, Andy, similar question as far as being in Wisconsin. It seems like the further north you go, in my experience, a lot of farmers are starting to question whether or not these practices actually can be successful. But obviously, you have a great story to tell in your neck of the woods, and would love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm constantly amazed that the farther south I go, the more I hear the same line is, we're too far north to do those things. So it's kind of ironic that here we are 100 miles from Lake Superior, and yet the principles, I was just in North Carolina last week, and the principles of cover crops and the principles of soil health are universal. The only thing that's different is timing. Otherwise, everything else fits. My story goes a long ways, and I don't know if you want me to take time to tell
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
I like to say I'm a victim of the 1980s farm crisis that ended up with a silver lining. As you know, those of you that are gray-haired and have shiny tops, you probably went through those 80s time periods when we watched our land values go from 400% of what they eventually were, and we watched our interest rates go to 400% of what they originally were, all at the same time within a short period. I was young and right out of college at that point in time and had very little equity, and so I was a casualty of that, and I had to start over, and I started over again, but I didn't have any credit, I didn't have any money, so I started no-tilling and doing things on a completely different budgetary method than what I had originally been taught in college. And so with that process and those beginnings back in 91 again, for the second time around, we began to see things differently. We began to see things from an efficiency standpoint. We began to see things from not how much we can produce per acre, but how many dollars we could generate that we could keep per acre. And that was a completely different mindset. And I like to tell my colleagues and my mentors that you'll never change how you operate until you change how you think. And if you're like a dairyman that's only focused on the maximum number of 100 weights of milk you get out of a cow, instead of focusing on the margin per 100 weight on that production, that's the mindset that you have to have. And so from those beginnings, through the years, we began to play with different things, timing on nitrogen, amounts of nitrogen, types of nitrogen, reducing tillage, strip tilling, all of those kinds of things. And then eventually got to be cover crops after 2000. And we've just continually improved our production all that time. And I think largely as a result of the building of the soil qualities that we talk about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. Moving to John here. John was a rock star on our farmer panel last year, so happy to have him back. Why don't you go ahead and for those of you who don't know you, kind of walk through your operation. And obviously, you're right across the river in Illinois, but also have operations in South America as well. So just kind of give us a flavor as far as everything that's going on in the world of John Carroll here.
Sure. So I've always wanted to be a rock star, so this is awesome. Yeah, so we're based in Carthage, Illinois, which is right where Illinois, Iowa, Missouri all touch on the Mississippi River. So we farm in those counties around there in those 3 states. I'm the 5th generation, and we 2002, I was in college, and we had some opportunities for some study abroads in Brazil, ag-based, and so that was kind of the first exposure to down there. And the family said, "Hey, if you want to move down there and start it up, we'll put in the capital." So that's what I did. So I was 22 when I moved there, and now I'm 45. So over half my life I've spent either living in Brazil or most of my day focused on Brazil. So we are on the production side, corn, soybeans, pigs, and then in Brazil also we have dairy, beef, some irrigated, some dry land. We have a farm management, farm brokerage business in Brazil, as well as an ag lending business. And I guess my journey with Continuum and with the regen or sustainability or whatever the latest word for it is, I think we all like to think that we've kind of made up our own minds about things, that we've had these lived experiences, and we've decided freely what we do and what we don't do. And then you get down to Brazil and you're like, oh, actually a lot of the things I thought were mainly just because of where I grew up, and not because of I actually looked hard at some of these and decided whether they made sense or not. And in Brazil, pretty much all the corn that's planted, when it gets yay tall, they plant grass into it. Now, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard, to plant grass into my corn. And we're never going to do that. And now we do it on every acre of corn that we plant in Brazil. And it works great. And our goal is our goal is a cover crop on every acre that we farm in Brazil. And I think just because of that, that gave us the courage, having done it in Brazil and seen the positive agronomic and economic benefits from it, gave us the courage in Illinois and Iowa to go to be kind of early adopters there. And so we got involved with Mitchell, and he's helped us both on kind of adapting what we knew from Brazil to here to the U.S. reality of it, and but we're continuing to be humble and learn.
So that's a fantastic story, and all three of these guys have similar stories as far as what that looks like on the regen perspective. But diving into the next step, it's one step to be implementing these practices successfully, but then the next step is what do we do to try and capitalize it? As we've talked about ad nauseum before, is it's not just producing the yield, it's now how can we capitalize on the data that's generated as well to create an asset. So Hans, we'll start with you as far as just the data management side of things. How have you approached that at Blue Diamond, just basically to understand that that is the future? What's been your approach with that?
Totally. So we are a John Deere Operations Center based farm at this time. We were early to Field View when that came out, and helped with some of the development for that. But we quickly realized that it helped a bunch of different businesses, not just the carbon side. And really our data management was from looking at our agronomics. We also have a lot of infrastructure built, grain sites, dryers. We have a custom farming business. We could suddenly start using all this data to help us bill out those businesses. Well, then very quickly, then the carbon market systems came in, and in 2018-19, we started getting involved in some of them. So we realized that what we were taking from these programs and payments, we should turn around and utilize as kind of a windfall reinvestment. My question is always, what am I going to do with this that I didn't expect to have that makes everything better? And it's kind of like, so we've gone to having synchronous uploads out of all of our tractors, having all the data stored on the cloud. That sounds very fancy. It's just a lot of headaches and getting things plugged in right, but we got there. And that's helped us be able to take that and integrate it into a system like TopSoil or otherwise.
Makes sense. Andy, I've got a special question for you. You specialize particularly with some of the national boards with soybeans. How do you see the soybean realm being mixed in with 45Z? Obviously, we talked about how soybeans, it's not completely neglected, but this has not been front and center like corn has. Do you have any perspective as far as how we're going to fold in soybeans into 45Z, and how can soybean farmers capitalize? Because obviously soybean and corn farmers, you're typically both of them at the same time in any given year. So anyone who's participating in the corn programs will most likely want to be doing it for soybeans as well. So I wanted your perspective on that.
Great question. And I alluded to it a little earlier in the question I asked of Mitch. What about the oil seeds? Yeah. Typically, when we're thinking about regenerative ag, it's not a monoculture, it's not a monocrop, it's a rotation. It's a crop rotation. And eventually, I think this space is going to evolve into including the rotation and the different steps that we do in both the prior crop and the succeeding crop in this rotation and in overall in our carbon scoring. That being said, you know, bioenergy is not just ethanol. It's renewable diesel. Our oilseed crops, whether it's sunflowers or canola or camelina or cottonseed oil or you name it, even the oil that we get out of our centrifuges in our ethanol plants, this can all be part of our bioenergy program. And I believe that once this has a chance to evolve, all of those crops will have a play. And I'm an advocate in my own farm operation of a third crop in the rotation, whether that's forage or whether that's a small grain or something else. The small grains give us a tremendous opportunity to have a long period of cover crops following the straw harvest or following the combining of those small grains. What a fantastic opportunity to build nitrogen for the corn crop that will follow at no cost. Talk about a low carbon score. That should give you an incredibly low carbon score because you can just literally cut out about a third of the nitrogen purchase just with that one practice. So Yes, thank you for recognizing my involvement in the soybean industry. I was just recently appointed to the USB. We are very focused on that in our using your checkoff dollars to help find new opportunities. And I can tell you that biodiesel and renewable diesel are very, very high on that agenda, with your checkoff dollars being used to fund that development of new markets. We need that. We relish it. We thank you for the opportunity to invest on your behalf. And I promise you that we're tireless in pursuing it.
That's wonderful. John, we'll go ahead and pivot a little bit to a conversation we were having just yesterday. As far as, it's actually a topic that we haven't really hit on, but I feel like it's on most farmers' minds, the brave new world of AI. What in the world do you see as the future for farmers being able to utilize this brand new tool that I think most farmers would agree this is going to be part of our lives? It's just how, and how do we take advantage, and what are the successful farmers that are going to take advantage of this first? What are the things that they should be implementing or thinking about with their own operations, in your thoughts?
Yeah, so when I speak to a swine group, I have to point out this is AI, artificial intelligence, not artificial insemination.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
don't be confused.
Yeah.
So I believe that the world, I think there's a decent chance the world in 3 years could look like unrecognizable from today because of AI. And I'm not saying in a good or bad way. That's left to be seen, but I think there's a potential for major disruption, for some major job loss. And I'm surprised, I guess, somewhat surprised in the ag community how few people even are using AI, understand what it is. And I do think that agriculture is probably on the spectrum of industries that'll be affected in the short term. It's probably towards the least, less affected directly. But indirectly, there could be major social changes happening around us that could affect our industry. So I think it's important to be doing some reading on it, be using it. Just to start out is like, get yourself a Claude or a ChatGPT account, and it's pretty cheap, $20 a month, and start messing around, start asking some questions, and if you don't know what to ask it what questions to ask. And just by using it and experimenting, I think you'll see what all the hype is about. But specifically to what it can do for us, I think that we do collect a lot of data in agriculture, both on the livestock and the grain side. We have a lot of years of data, and that's pretty exciting for people who know a lot about AI. But we have not been using that data very well to turn it into actionable information. And AI gives us a way to interact with our data in an easier way, right? Where you can ask plain English questions to your data and get answers from it. But just at a minimum, just start out playing around with it.
All right, we'll pivot again. Hans, since you're the representation of the younger generation up here, you were actually selected as a Nuffield Scholar. And I don't think that many people know exactly what that is, but it is extremely prestigious. I know we called out John for being a rock star. Really, in reality, we have 3 rock stars up here. And so really kind of walk us through what that experience was and your advice as far as anyone who might be interested or pursuing that.
So the Nuffield Scholarship is a program that was created by farmers, for farmers, that someone who's got an idea of a topic that they want to study across the world has the opportunity to apply, pitch their topic to a board of investors, and then they fund your ability to go travel to different farming operations and study that. For me, I was really interested in how family farm succession works in other countries, because all of us, I'd say raise your hand if you know a story that didn't go right for succession. We'd all suddenly have our hands in the air. And the question was, are there places where there are systems which are doing this better? And I had the opportunity to apply for the program, was pulled into it. You meet hundreds of other people, farmers, people in agribusiness, and you go with them to every corner of the world, and you do some of that guided with them, with a group, and then some of that is an individual study where you travel on your own, and you get to go talk to growers just like this, where you get to see a grower who's in Western Australia or Zimbabwe or along the Russian border and hear about how much is the same, how much is different, what they do in their operations, and it's an exchange of knowledge just like this, but being able to interface with someone who's got an entirely different set of cards than you do. So did that for the last year and a half, working at getting the research report all written up and turned in. Soybean Association was one of our sponsors here in Iowa, and no, it's been wonderful. If you have any questions about it, you have an idea that's burning in the back of your mind, reach out to me because I'd be happy to help you look at the application process, but it's just great. If you think of something that you really are passionate about studying and want to learn, it's a program where you can go out and actually exercise on that.
I mean, it's a tremendous amount of effort as well. I mean, would you recommend that? And then the first steps, well, how do you even get started down the path?
I feel like the first step is if you just got a question that's keeping you up at night. That's the thing. It is a tremendous amount of effort, but like suddenly if you've got something that you're already putting the effort into thinking about it, then I mean, honestly, online application. You just go ahead and you can look it up online. You can get in touch with any of us who've been alumni, and we'd be happy to guide you into that process.
All right, we'll get into the nitty-gritty details here as far as the whole point of this is to try and be candid. And so, Andy, Trump was in your state here just a little bit ago. What's the sentiment as far as the government climate in general, or from the farmer's perspective, and if they had any perspective on 45Z, but in general, where do they view the climate as far as agriculture from a government perspective?
Well, let me start by expressing my gratitude for Secretary Vilsack for being here. I thought he did a phenomenal job of illustrating just what a servant he's been to us as a group of farmers. That's admirable, and I applaud him for that. Trump is Trump. I view myself as a conservative, quite cautious in my approach on things. And I can say this, that I think Secretary Rollins has farmers' interest in mind. I think she's very supportive. I think she is doing everything that she can to bring our purpose along with the bioenergy and the 45Z and so forth. You never know exactly where Trump is coming from or where he's going. The respect the office of the presidency, yes, but candidly, as long as we're being candid,
please, absolutely.
I wish he had a filter sometimes. He quite often does not. He usually does not. But he is who he is, and he has a lot of power, and he has gotten a lot of things done that we have to give him credit for. So I will continue to respect our president. I will continue to applaud his successes and support his cabinet. And I think, I don't know where we're headed, but I know we're along for a ride.
That's as candid as you can get. So, John,
I really didn't say much about the Wisconsin farmers. I pretty much said
if you wanted
I think I reflect what a lot of us as farmers in Northwest Wisconsin feel like about him. Yeah. We're supportive, but we do just shake our heads once in a while.
Yeah. All right, John, going back to as far as just your experience in Brazil, give us kind of the South American update here. We love to hear not just how the crop is doing up here, but also how things are going in South America since they have such an impact on markets here. Obviously, we'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so Brazil is in a lot of pain right now from several years of sustained low prices. There are record numbers of bankruptcies. The growth, expansion in new areas has all but stopped. And I think that they're getting hit pretty hard again here with the war in Iran, and this is normally fertilizer purchasing time right now, and it's high. And they already were poorly capitalized, And the banking system, the financial system, because of the legal system, does not work anything like the U.S. Farmers just cannot easily pull equity from land during bad times to keep going. And fortunately or unfortunately, the U.S. and Brazil continue to post record crops year after year after year, it seems like. And so I think it's going to be another tough year for Brazil, barring some major weather event. But it's that time of the cycle, right? We've seen this before, and something will change at some point, and Brazil is poised for massive growth again as soon as this happens. There's more land to be developed. The Brazilian farmer has, since I started there 24 years ago, has just made incredible strides in their productive capacity, in their yields, in their efficiencies. And I'd say when I arrived, they were farming like the U.S. farmer did in 1960, and now they are all the way caught up, and in some cases ahead of the U.S. farmer in their adoption of technologies. The last 20 years, they just took it, absorbed it all, and got caught right up.
All right, I'm starting to get some questions from the group, so thank you for your questions here. And again, feel free to be texting them. I'll try and get to as many as I can. I think this is for all three of you, so maybe go down the line here. What steps are you currently taking to back up and secure your farm data? How prepared are you to recover from potential unintended deleted data breaches, ransomware attacks? Obviously, farm data is the farmer's property until they sell it or it's hacked. So is there anything that you guys are doing to secure your data? Hans, let's start with you and go on down the line.
I didn't think that was a very serious question until about November last year. It was on a group of farmers who were an advisory council somewhere, and 3 or 4 of them had all had their data broken into. Now these are avocado growers and other industries that have more niche systems. And row crops are pretty safe if you're on a major system. But we keep all of anything that we do. We download a PDF copy. We've got it. It's pretty simple. I actually just made an account for the logins for all my employees to be separate from my login. It used to be like, just sign in here. And all of a sudden I realized, if Dad didn't want to let me know that he sprayed off the last of that batch somewhere, he could just delete it. Maybe he won't have that login anymore. But that's the simple steps that we've started to take on our side. But we probably should step it up.
Andy?
We just invested this last 6 months in cloud-based system of keeping track of all the equipment. Actually, every tractor now is a mobile hotspot using Starlink, so everything is real-time in the cloud, so that really works well for whatever somebody's doing in the field, to have real-time, real space, real rates, all being put together in one repository. Obviously, if something should go wrong, will it affect all of those mobile things? I hope not. But certainly by having it in the cloud, we have another place where things are kept that we can access and that we can manipulate that data. I'm excited about what the future holds there as we begin to build. We've got probably 25 years of yield data, so it goes back a long time. I'm the first guy to put a yield monitor, I think, on a John Deere 6600 combine in about whatever year that was. But we've come a long way since then.
All right. And John, how about you?
Yeah, so we got hacked about 10 years ago, so we were really early on. I got to be one of the first Bitcoin users as we paid our ransom. Our data did not get released after we paid it, which I think is a really bad business plan for the hackers. So we did. We went through losing everything, and so everything is on the cloud as well as weekly onto a physical hard drive that is stored in a fireproof safe, and 2-factor authentication everywhere for every account, because nobody's ever getting in through the main person and main account. It's an intern, an employee. It's somebody that is not paying much attention to it, and that's how they get in. So yeah, it's a real risk, real problem.
John, have a question specifically for you. So going back to just AI, how are you using it specifically beyond just the general searches or how to get started? You're obviously much further along the path. So how are you currently using AI in your operation?
Yeah, so I guess a few projects that we've done in the last year. I'd say first of all, think of it as AI is not. It's not an IT problem. It is. It's just about using it. Like it works, and you don't need to hire some technical guy to come in and show you how to do it. And so we looked around at where we thought, what were some things we could do that would have the highest leverage, highest impact for us? So one of them would be an agronomic platform where we go out every 2 years and we grid sample GPS on the exact same spot every 2 years. And so we know the soil analysis for that place, and then we know what the yield was at that spot. We take about 100 foot around that spot and we look at the yield there. And we have many years of that data. So we got that, the first step, get it all into a central place, and then you start building out the machine learning and AI system to be able to find those correlations that go beyond what we can see with the human eye, right? It's easy for us to look at a yield map and lay it over the top of a phosphorus map and say, well, I think I see something or I think I don't. It's another thing to say, okay, well, if phosphorus is at some minimum level and potassium is at this level and you have the absence of aluminum and you have just enough zinc, then what? So those are the types of multifactorial these variables that we're looking at to try to find stronger correlations, see what is really yield limiting for us and where that next dollar for fertilizer should be invested.
Are you doing that on your own, or are you doing that with a specific group, or?
We're doing that on our own.
All right, I think this is another question for the group. Just in general, obviously, the theme of today is built for this. And in many ways, you guys have been preparing for this along with us. And so the question for you guys is, knowing 45Z is imminent, as they say, what would you say is the best way to prepare for 45Z? What are the things that you guys have done, or what would be your best piece of advice to prepare for 45Z coming forward here? And Hans will start over there again and go down the line.
I would say doing nothing is a risk, and it's a bigger risk than you think it is. And so at the start of the year, on any given year, I take this many dollars an acre, and I just say I'm going to light $5 on fire. And if I buy a data management platform for this year, or I enroll one field, it's like $5 across on every acre isn't going to go far, but maybe I pour that onto 40 acres and say I'm enrolling it on everything with TopSoil or with another group or something. Just make sure that you are doing something, because you're going to do it wrong. I'm going to do it wrong. We're all going to do it wrong. But at least you go a couple iterations, learn what you need, figure out how to document for these markets, figure out how to document for whatever else may come in. So if that risk is you could put 1% of your acres at it, fantastic. That's going to be the most profitable 1% of your acres that your grandkids look at you one day and say, I'm so glad they did that in 2026. So my thing is, do something, set aside something, even if it's tiny.
What do you think, Andy?
I think there's several things that must be done at the same time. Number one is you need to prioritize your opportunity. We saw some lists today of how much different activities can change your CI score. So the first thing you have to do is decide you're going to do something, then prioritize and pick out those things which you think, based on what you saw today, can move your needle the farthest, the fastest. And the third thing is you have to document what you do. If you do all these things but nobody knows, it doesn't have value. It only has value when you can document it so that a third party can look at it and say, yes, that's what they did. And those three things, I think, are the initial stage for anybody that's been, at this point in time, just a spectator.
All right, John, what do you think as far as the best way to prepare or be ready for 45Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think the math's pretty simple, and each person should do their own math, but it's simply, what do you think it's worth per acre, multiplied by the percent chance that it's gonna happen, right? So if you think it's worth $100 an acre and there's an 80% chance it's gonna happen, that's worth $80 an acre. So if I gotta spend 5 to make sure I'm ready for it, like that's a lot better than buying the Powerball ticket.
That's fair. All right, Andy, I've got a specific question for you. How do you make regen practices work in your neck of the woods? Just in general, I think that obviously going further north, the risk is higher. How have you been able to be successful with it?
Well, first and foremost is having a mindset that we can make it work. Okay, if you have your mind made up that this isn't going to work here and you're never willing to invest anything and try something, it's never going to work because you're never going to try it. That being said, and I said earlier that the principles, wherever you are, farther north or farther south, are the same. We can still make cover crops work. Last year, even though I'm 100 miles from Lake Superior, we had over 1,000 acres of cereal rye planted into corn harvested for grain. Now, we're talking about harvesting for grain in my part of the world in November. So, but there's a couple of secrets to that. Number one is you must get seed soil contact. If you spread cover crops on the surface in my neck of the woods, chances are they'll still be there or they'll be consumed by some of the ravenous soil life that we have. So seed soil contact is one of the secrets. The second secret is make sure that you use species that work in your area. We can't plant vetch in September and expect it to establish. Too late. Same with medium red clover. However, if we do those same things, follow on a small grain crop where we harvest in early August, we have a very good chance and we have a very good success rate of getting really good growth and really good biological activity out of those crops that we can plant in August. So tailor your crop rotation around the objectives that you need to accomplish. We just started working with camelina. I really, really like camelina ahead of corn instead of cereal rye. And the reason is, number one, corn's a grass, rye's a grass, and corn and rye don't necessarily see eye to eye. They like to compete with each other and steal each other's nitrogen, and there's a carbon intensity thing there between the corn and the rye that aren't exactly good. However, the camelina seems to do just fine, and the corn doesn't mind the camelina, and the camelina can be planted very late. We've planted as late as the 1st of November, and we've had really good success. Generally, we get the camelina planted in early October during the bean harvest, right behind the combine. But so all those things tailor to your own environment wherever you live. That's how we've been able to make some of those successes happen. And we didn't talk about fertility at all, but we just talked about cover crops there.
I mean, any advice on the fertility?
We try not to get more than half of our nitrogen down at planting or before. We do strip till. All of our strip till is spring strip till. If we try to do strip till in the fall, we get too much erosion. We have way too much rolling ground, and in the spring that strip will thaw out quicker than the rest of it. And if we get one of those April showers that come a little hard and a little fast, we can blow those strips out. So we like to strip till just within the 10 days prior to planting. And then we come back later with our second passes of nitrogen. Probably will be mid to end of June probably. We'll be coming back. And so we're splitting our nitrogen up, trying to get sulfur in a defined ratio with our nitrogen to help our nitrogen efficiency. Some of those kinds of things. So.
That's fantastic. Hans, we got a question for you. So just with your international experience that you've gathered, from your global perspective, where do you think the sustainability train is going internationally?
I don't know if you're going to like my answer.
Please, let's hear it.
The thing that's consistent with talking to farmers in other countries is you ought to feel darn lucky to be on this soil. In the US, whichever political direction you prefer, both sides tend to be looking at this as how do we create an incentive and an opportunity for the farmer to benefit by engaging themselves in this market. You go to other places, I've got Australian farmers who have to set aside parts of their ranches. You've got farmers in New Zealand or in Scotland where farmland's being absorbed to plant pine trees to sequester carbon. It's causing mass erosion. There are much worse approaches being taken around the world, and there are much worse systems in which you have to try to fit a farming operation. So I think that's why it's kind of imperative at this moment, whatever you want, to whatever level you want to participate in the markets that exist, you kind of help them see some validity as to this approach can work and this approach can work in the United States, because otherwise we may put in a government that says not enough's been done, and darn it, we should copy somewhere with a worse plan. You know, you farm in Brazil, you know well too much about their government and their approach to the environment.
John, do you have any thoughts as far as South America approach?
You know, there's some very strict rules in place now in Brazil, and the government is incentivizing taking degraded pasture lands. This was stuff that was slashed and burned 20, 30, 40 years ago, and it's been grazed to no value now. And that's the land that's left to be turned into crop production, and there's quite a bit of it. And so this last year, the Brazilian government put up several $1 billion of subsidized money, 1% interest fixed for 10 years, which gets mixed in with some bank or private capital to lend out to farmers specifically for that purpose. So I'd say that's their main lever right now to try to stop deforestation, is incentivizing economically, right, through subsidized financing to develop more of that degraded pasture land.
And one more thing to throw in here is you also have to remember that our markets are also going to ask things of us. You know, how many people got paid for deforestation, you know, attestations on their soybeans the other year. And you go to Rotterdam in the Netherlands, they talk about what quotas they want to put on us in the future. And so, you know, there is a market right now for us to take advantage of, even if it comes from beyond our own borders.
All right, I think we're pretty much almost time. You've got 3 minutes left, so I guess time for one more question, and just generic advice. So if you were to advise a young farmer who's just starting off, Hans, they're not too far off of that, but piece of advice that you would give them looking forward as far as their own operations, what would you say is the best piece of advice you can give them, given all the things that we've been talking about today and your perspective outlook on the going forward? So I don't know, who wants to start, and we'll just go down the line. Or Hans, how about we can start with you? I'll call you out again.
I'll go back to saying that doing nothing's a risk, and it's a bigger risk than you think. And so it's make sure that you take this moment in time where you can reasonably take risks, and it's fairly secure here. Our market's fairly safe for us to participate in it. Do something small. You can always build it bigger, and read your contracts well.
My dad told me many, many, many years ago that if you don't do anything, you'll never do anything wrong. And so I think if I was talking to the younger generation, and I have a few of them working for me, the most important things that you need to have to be a good employee and to learn well don't cost you any money. Show up, be present, and have a little ambition. So if you don't do anything, you're certainly not going to do anything right. So engage, learn, pay attention, and the opportunities are there. I'm more than happy to share what I've learned in my 50 years, but they don't have to learn from me. There's plenty of other ways. But it's not going to stay the same as it was for your dad and your grandfather. We are in a very, very rapidly changing agricultural environment, and that will continue.
John, finish us off here.
Yeah, I think I would say that I think there is beginning to be some separation in the food system between the old school, highly commoditized, cheapest food for 5 billion people, and then the other part of the K is like highly individualized niche food for a couple different things. You've got a younger generation that is, it's part of who they are is what they eat, and they don't care really how much it costs for those things. I think the GLP-1, 20% of Americans have been on GLP-1s, which means they're eating less total calories, but the calories they do eat, they want some pretty high quality, pretty specific things. So in that other part of the food system, cost is not so much of a factor, but it's highly individualized. And I think in the US, we are kind of poised to handle that side of the market best because our food system is highly trusted. We can export easily. We have a lot of wealth here in this nation. We can get food to other nations that have the upper middle class, upper class that'll pay for this. Whereas just on the pure commodity stuff, it is going to be really hard to compete with Brazil, I think. So if I was a young farmer and I just wanted to go out and just farm corn and soybeans and I was not from a well-established operation already, unfortunately, I think it's nearly impossible.
Well, fantastic insight. Let's give these farmers a big hand here, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So I think that we're going to be pivoting